As we start a new session of Life Groups, I've been in thought and prayer about some new things that God may want us to be doing together. And one of the things I thought of was coming together with our Life Groups and making them a little more pastoral. And this is one thing I want to do. I want you to institute taking the Lord's Supper together at your Life Group. Now, here's what command, it sounds like a heavy word, but this is what I'm telling you to do. I want you to do it at least twice. I want you to do it towards the beginning. Doesn't have to be the first week, but maybe the second week or something. I want you to do it towards the beginning, and I want you to do it towards the end. If you want to do it more times, or if you wanted to do it every week, that would be fine with me. The reason why is I want us to get out of the idea that taking communion, the Lord's Supper together, is something that should be reserved only for Sunday morning church. And actually, that personal, relatable level, the way of doing it together in one of your life groups, man, I think that's such a sweet and meaningful place to do it. So let me suggest to you some ways. Ideally, you have a little bit of worship in the context of this. And then the go-to passage that's very helpful, I don't want you to do it on automatic pilot, but thinking through it, is the passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 through 26, where Paul talks about the institution of the Lord's Supper there at the Corinthian church. So I want you to read through that passage, and look, if you have any questions on specifics, feel free to ask Pastor Lars. But really, I want you to consider how God would want you to lead the Lord's Supper there at your life group. Now, I'll tell you what you can do if you want to get big. Some of you guys have potluck meals together. You know, the early church, when they often celebrated the Lord's Supper, they did it in the context of a potluck meal. That is a pretty cool thing to do. I'm not going to require it, but it's something to keep in mind. And you can do it with a simple piece of bread that each person takes a piece from, some grape juice. If it's okay with your life group, you could use wine if you wanted to, but I mean, I'll leave that to you, and just use some really good scriptural common sense, whether or not you do. You can drink from a common cup. You can have cups distributed. I'll let you make those decisions as to what's right for your group. But I will tell you this, that one of the most special ways that I've ever taken communion in a small group setting was each person would be given a piece of bread that's a pretty good little chunk, you know, that would fit in your hand, more than you would eat for yourself. And what we would do is we would go around and meet with everybody in our small group. You can't do this with more than like 15 people really effectively, maybe 20. You go around with everybody in the group and you give them a piece of bread and they give you a piece of their bread, and maybe say an encouraging word one to another, and you take communion one-on-one together with everybody in the room. I've done that way of taking communion several times in small groups. It can be extremely meaningful. But you'll have the liberty, because we want you to take communion at least twice together as a group. We want you to do it more than that if you would like to, but we want to do this as a way of introducing a greater focus on pastoral community together there with the life groups. One other thing, don't be afraid to let us know. I know pastoral needs, people who need prayer, maybe people who need counseling, people who are in the hospital. You guys are good at dealing at those on a life group level. Please do not be afraid to let us know. You can let Lars know, or one of the other pastors, hey, there's a person in the hospital who should be visited. Hey, this person might need more counseling than we can really get to in our life group. We want to use those life groups as a way for us to be aware of pastoral needs in our congregation, because we got a pastoral staff that's ready and willing to meet those needs. We'll talk more about this through our life group session, most likely. If you have any questions, you can give them to me or to Pastor Lars. But we just want to encourage you in what God is doing among our life groups. God bless you and have a great life group season.